Welcome to the U.S. latest news channel. Watch the video to the end to find out the current and breaking news about the Russian war in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine announced in a statement that soldiers belonging to the Russian army, captured and taken prisoner in the Kherson region, confessed to killing civilians as a result of interrogation. A Russian soldier who has been interrogated has confessed to killing civilians during the occupation of the Kiev region of Ukraine by the Russian army. This confession and the results of the interrogation were presented to the media by the press service of the SSU. The captured Russian army troops were said to have been captured by the Ukrainian army during clashes in the Kherson region. While the interrogation and investigation operations were continuing, the crimes committed by the Russian army against the civilian population in the Kiev region were revealed as a result of the discovery of mass graves and confessions made by captured Russian army soldiers. At the beginning of March last year, a Russian soldier confessed that he and soldiers from the other occupying Russian army killed a Ukrainian civilian with a machine gun on a highway near the village of Zdvizhivka in Bucha district and dismembered his body, then buried it in the forest. The soldiers belonging to the Russian army who were arrested as part of the interrogations and investigations were brought to the Ukrainian courts for trial. The soldiers belonging to the Russian army had to confess one by one the places where the civilians they had killed were buried and the murders they had committed against civilians. Within the scope of the investigations carried out, the Russian soldier who received the most severe punishment was 98th Guards Airborne Division 331. It was reported that he belonged to the company. This Russian soldier, who has received the most severe punishment, confessed to killing civilians and raping women in Syria during the fighting in Syria in 2019. Before the hearing by the Ukrainian court, the Russian soldier, who admitted his guilt, said that he did not express any remorse. SSU investigators found the invading soldier under Article 438 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. Article explained that he was sentenced to life imprisonment in accordance with the clause. The Ukrainian Security Service announced that it had recently captured a group of Ukrainian traitors in Kiev who shared information about Ukraine's infrastructure facilities, railway plans, and top commanders of the Ukrainian Army in exchange for money, and that the traitors faced life imprisonment. The Ukrainian Army has begun using the anti-aircraft artillery system Gepard, which it received from Germany, against the air units of the invading Russian army roaming in the region. It was said that the Gepard works combined with the Osa-AKM anti-aircraft missile system. The Gepard SPAAGs purchased from Germany are an anti-aircraft artillery system that can hit targets at a distance of up to 100 meters and 4 kilometers, and only 3 soldiers are required to use this system. Thanks to the Gepards received from Germany, a total of more than 7 aircraft identified as belonging to the invading Russian army have been shot down so far. According to the statement of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry this morning, the Russian R-330ZH Zdvizhivka combat system belonging to the Russian army was destroyed by the Ukrainian army which carried out attacks on the Kharkiv region. In the video shared by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on its social media account, the destruction of the Russian army's Zdvizhivka system was recorded moment by reconnaissance drones. The Ukrainian Army has announced that it has captured the R2 BMV station in the Kharkiv region, where the Borsoglepsk 934 multifunctional electronic warfare weapon system is installed and where the equipment of the Russian Army is stored and camped. This morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a meeting with the Chief of Staff of the Commander-in-Chief. At this meeting, the issues of the Ukrainian Army's progress in the occupied territories and the 300,000 Russian citizens conscripted as part of the mobilization of the Russian Army were discussed. In addition, one of the most important issues discussed at the meeting was the referendums to be held in the regions under the occupation of the Russian Army. The meeting was attended by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the Chief of Staff of the Commander-in-Chief, senior commanders of the Ukrainian Army and ministries. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. After the meeting, the Ukrainian Army made progress on the areas which are under the occupation of the highest and says that they have the latest technology weapons and equipment. In the continuation of the description of the regions under occupation in the territory of Ukraine from the Russian Army and Ukrainian Army will be flushed can regulate the action towards the Russian border, he said. In addition, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that new orders of state-of-the-art weapons, air defense systems, and rocket systems, especially HIMARS, have been placed from the United States. The U.S. Parliament decried the delivery of HIMARS and other air defense systems ordered by Ukraine in a vote, but later, after a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Joe Biden, the delivery of the orders was discussed and accepted at the U.S. Foreign Affairs Commission. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine announced that Russian military superiors in the occupied cities located in the southern and eastern regions of Ukraine were shot down. More than 5 equipment belonging to the Russian Army, soldiers in the Upper Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk regions occupied by the Russian Army were shot down by the Upper Ukrainian Army with a ballistic missile. On September 23rd, in the city of Starobilsk in the Luhansk region, an area belonging to the Russian Army was recaptured by the Ukrainian Army, and more than 100 Russian soldiers were captured as prisoners. It is also among the information received that the captured Russian soldiers are being interrogated and will be decommissioned by Ukrainian courts for trial. According to the statement made by the Russian Defense Ministry, it was said that the superiors of the Ukrainian Army, who were shot down and attacked, were hit by 270 GMLRS missiles fired by M142M4 HIMARS systems. The Russian Defense Ministry continued its statement by claiming that Ukraine also targeted the civilian population in the areas where the Ukrainian Army's attacks were carried out, and the Ukrainian Army killed a total of about 70 civilians. The Ministry of State Security of the LPR, located in the Luhansk region of Ukraine and belonging to the Security Service of Ukraine until 2014, was destroyed as a result of attacks by the Ukrainian Army. Luhansk regional military official Syria announced that a gas station in Alchevsk exploded as a result of attacks carried out by the Ukrainian Army. A military base established by the occupying Russian Army in the city of Kiev in the Donetsk region of Ukraine was destroyed by the Ukrainian Army. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine continued its statements and announced that a warehouse in the city of Lubomivka, which houses equipment belonging to the Russian Army and Russian soldiers in the Kherson region, was destroyed. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry also announced that Alexei Zuravko, a Russian collaborator and former Ukrainian MP, was killed as a result of the attacks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a statement that Russian President Vladimir Putin promised that if 300,000 soldiers recruited as part of the mobilization surrender to the Ukrainian Army, the identities of surrendered Russian soldiers will not be revealed and will not be returned to Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in continuation of his statement, also made it clear that Russian soldiers who were recruited as part of the partial mobilization in Russia will not be punished if they come to Ukraine and surrender. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that surrendered Russian soldiers will not face any ill treatment, no information will be provided about the soldiers who surrendered to Russia, and Russian soldiers who were conscripted as part of partial mobilization will not be returned to Russia if they surrender. This statement made by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also closely concerns the changing legislation and criminal code in Russia since the war began. On September 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that the voluntary surrender of any soldier belonging to the Russian army to Ukraine will result in 3 to 10 years in prison, and any Russian soldier who provides any information to the Ukrainian army faces a life sentence. As a result of the fact that Russian citizens who were conscripted as part of partial mobilization did not continue military service or left military service, the penalties to be imposed were increased. Within the scope of absenteeism from 2 years to 10 days, penalties up to 10 years and life imprisonment may be imposed on a person. Vladimir Putin also stated that the soldiers who joined the army as part of the partial mobilization will be punished if they do not comply with the orders of the commanders. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine claimed that in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions ruled by Russian invaders, the authorities put pressure on the population to fight against Ukraine in exchange for Russian citizenship, and the scale of these pressures resulted in deaths. Who do you think will be the winner of the Ukrainian-Russian war? The Ukrainian Air Assault Forces Command announced on September 24, 2022, that more than one aircraft belonging to the Russian military, the number of which is unknown, was destroyed with a share it made on its social media account. The Russian Defense Ministry, on the other hand, said that the statement was correct and that only 2 Su-35 fighter jets were destroyed. The unit that destroyed the warplanes belonging to the Russian Army belongs to the Ukrainian Army. It was stated that the Air Assault Special Forces Regiment. In the video published by the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces Command on its social media account, it was clearly seen that the Su-30 and Su-25 aircraft were destroyed. It was said that the pilots of these destroyed planes belonging to the Russian Army had not received any news. Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov said that the destroyed Russian military aircraft were destroyed in the Kharkiv region thanks to Stinger manpad systems. The command of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine also published another video on the 8th. He explained that the soldiers of the regiment destroyed other combat aircraft belonging to the Russian Army with Igla manpad systems.